Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Sound of Metal. Sound of Metal, I think, captures the experience, or what my limited understanding of what the experience is of losing your hearing is within this feature film. It's mainly about specifically this one guy, Ruben, played by Riz Ahmed, in a really great performance, maybe the best performance I've seen from him, where he is very rapidly losing his hearing. He's a drummer in a band with his girlfriend, kind of a weird art punk band or something, I don't know. Him and his girlfriend are touring in an RV. They have a good life. They don't have the biggest band in the world, but it seems like they very much like what their life is. Kind of like a two-piece, I guess a gender swap, White Stripes, but artier. Not really, that's a bad explanation. But he's rapidly losing his hearing, and he's a drummer, and he's a ex-heroin addict, and he has to sort of find what to do, and he goes to a deaf or hearing impaired community with this instructor played by Paul Racy named Joe, who's going to show him and give him his assignment to learn sign language and learn to be deaf. And it's all about his transition from losing his hearing to learning how to be deaf, and what that means about him emotionally, what it means about his life, and his life with his girlfriend, and his life in general, and how he is going to basically adapt. And this film is basically about that transition in his life and that major point. The thing that captures all this, and there's a lot of really great filmmaking and a lot of people who work on this film who help in the storytelling. I think one thing when we talk about movies, we don't talk a lot. When we talk about great performances, we talk about sound design, we talk about cinematography. We don't talk about enough how all of this is to help tell a story, like, because duh. But that really is. And the sound design is amazing because you both get the perspective of what Riz Ahmed is hearing, but you also, sometimes you get what you would hear if you we're not Ruben, and your hearing is good and all that stuff, and you are able to hear. And you sometimes, like the dinner scene at the deaf community, or when his girlfriend's talking to him and he can't hear, and things like that, you get both perspectives, and it switches on and off, but it does it to really show you what is exactly going on. The sound design in this is really amazing. I know at the time I uploaded this, it was nominated for an Oscar. I don't know what happened, but I thought it's some of the best sound design I've seen in a long time. It really told the story. I'm not saying other sound design doesn't, but without this good sound design, you couldn't tell the story as well as you did. It's like an important detail that they absolutely nail, because there's certain moments where you really understand where he is. And what also helps is Riz Ahmed's performance, which shows you very viscerally a performance that kind of, if you've ever had like a health issue or something like that, it gnaws at you, particularly with your hearing. I've never had major hearing issues other than like some earwax I needed cleared out or something like that, but it bothers you. You constantly want to pick out, you're constantly thinking about it, especially if it's something that you had. He's an adult, he's been hearing his whole life, he's loved music, he loves listening to music, and suddenly there is an issue. And I think like losing something like that is really hard. It's a really hard thing to get used to, and showing like how it dramatically affects his life. And in this, you see his impulsiveness, you see how scared he is, you see how worried he is, you get the full grasp of him as a character. And without a performance like that, this film just wouldn't really work. I think Darius Marder, who directed this film, did a great job. I know he's worked with the guy Derek Schoenfrantz, I think, who did The Place Beyond the Pines and Blue Valentine and stuff like that, who also gets a story by credit here. I think he does a very good job of telling like a very interesting point in someone's life and showing like how adaptable we are as humans, but how hard it is to adapt. I think humanity is very adaptable, but oftentimes when you have adapted, you don't forget your old life or anything. You still know that, and also how that adaptation has changed you. He can't go back to being that Ruben. That Ruben is over, but he wants to go back. He wants to still be that person. I think there's a lot about identity in this film, and how hearing is part of your identity in a lot of cases, particularly Ruben. And it's hard to just let go of all of that. It's traumatic to let go of all of that. You like your identity, most likely. If you really don't, you would totally change it. So I think that's, and especially for an adult who's grown up and has, is in a relationship he really loves, and where he really loves this woman played by Olivia Cooke and everything. I think that is a dramatically hard thing to do, especially because he seems like, he went through his addiction, he did the whole 12 steps thing, and now he's working with Joe, played by Paul Racy, who he's so real in it. Everyone seems to think that he is this guy in the movie. I didn't look it up, but I actually just think he's a very well-trained theater actor. He seems to be one of those theater actors who can just like sort of naturally kind of show up in something, much like Mark Rylance. Like, you don't question what they're doing at all. Like, in some ways in their performance, they don't question it. I know he grew up, his parents were deaf or something like that, but you don't question him at all. He feels very genuine. And if you ever dealt with like a therapist or someone like that who is this like great mentor kind of figure, he embodies that so well. I think he has such a natural performance. You don't think it's performance in a lot of cases, which is insane. I think it's probably one of the more natural performances I've seen in a little bit, and he is able to be that kind of guidance, that figure that guides Ruben, to try to guide Ruben, to kind of show him this is his reality now. And Ruben, it is hard to, like, when your life changes, no matter what it is, to accept that. And I think there's oftentimes in my life I've felt that way, where like suddenly you're like, but what about I am that person still, am I not? I haven't gone through what this film is, and I don't want to lie to you and act like I have, but I think how I related to it is that it's like, it is hard to do that, and sometimes it takes a while to really realize what had happened. And I think like this film is almost the point where he's realizing he's trying to change, he's seeing the benefits, he's seeing what he likes about his new life, but he's also seeing what he given up. And this is like the whole film is the transition point, you know. I think sometimes film and storytelling is really good at doing those kind of stories, because afterwards you're a little more certain. Before, it's like it might be cool to see them go around the country in this weird like kind of character piece sort of thing, but this is like a memorable part of his life where he tried to figure things out, and that's dramatically so interesting. And I think Riz Ahmed falls into that so well in this film. You know, he shows you everything you need to know about this character, about Ruben, and everything Ruben's sort of going through. He's able to convey that so excellently, but also show like he likes like being at that community, like signing with kids, like meeting these people, being around these people. Like, I think it shows you the whole gamut of everything that's going on in this situation, really, because you're seeing the positives and the negatives, things that he loves about his old life, but things he loves about his new life. And that's a really interesting snapshot, really. I kind of, one of the things I really like about this film is it transports you so well. You're not thinking about structure, especially I'm not someone who sees films all the time. I'm not thinking about the structure or things like that. I'm thinking about being in it so much and thinking about that story. And I do think, you know, there's certain points where it takes like big tonal shifts, but I didn't reject that as much as I think that's sort of like what you'd have happen with your life. You know, when you do tonal shifts, I notice people get upset about that sometimes, but sometimes there's like a fucking reason to do a tonal shift, you know. I think this film earns it very well. Darius Marder, I think, is a very good filmmaker because he's able to tackle and use so many of these things in what looks like kind of just a simple character kind of study thing. You would think that, but I think there's so much more complexity going on here to nail exactly what's going on. And you feel within his head, you understand what his experience is going through that. And one of the things I love about movie making and storytelling is being able to be put in someone else's shoes, see an experience I wouldn't otherwise see or understand, and being placed in that. And it's one of I think it's like an amazing thing to be able to experience. And this does that so well, because I don't think I've seen a film tackle that as well. You wouldn't think, you know, with film and sound you'd be able to do that, but it's able to do all those things and show you that reality so well. And all these things seem to want to tell that kind of a story about this character and his transition in life, and all the decisions, disastrous, and the things he has to give up, and regrets of doing those things, and all the issues with doing something like that. I think it is such a deep and involved kind of film that feels kind of more visceral while you're watching it, and you realize there's so much more production-wise. There's so many different plates spinning at once to make it feel as natural as it is, and that's insanely impressive, because I don't think anyone's as determined to be able to tell this kind of story as this film really does, from the sound design, from Riz Ahmed's performance, from the naturalism of its writing. Really, it's a very natural feeling kind of film. I would say Darius Marder is such a smart filmmaker in terms of able to do all these things, because when you are able to be gifted with a feature film and directing a feature film and have those talents, it's one thing to show off everything and, you know, really shove it in your face. This film is actually not very showy, but if you look at everything he does, I don't think he's trying to be showy. I think he's really just trying to tell the story. But his naturalism in trying to tell that story shows you is almost the biggest show off, because he's not trying to show off, but nailing it this well shows off more than a lot of filmmakers can ever dream of. And that wasn't even his intent, which shows a naturalism in telling stories that I don't think a lot of directors can imagine right now. This is like the deep, kind of interesting sort of what's considered an indie film or whatever that I really love about filmmaking. And I like being in that story with Ruben, feeling his pain, feeling his frustration, and how scared he is going into this. I really like this movie. I think it captures something about the deaf community, and especially an adult. And going into that, I know there's complexities over people who feel like they shouldn't try to correct being deaf, and being deaf is a gift in itself. And I actually think this film gets into that a little bit, but you can't tackle all those things in one story. You can only tackle Ruben's experience. And I think under what Ruben's experience is, I think this film shows that amazingly well and leaves you kind of just thinking what he's going to be after this hearing transition and what that all means and how he's going to figure that out. It makes you think about the versatility of life and just being given this kind of snapshot of someone. Hope to emphasize, and just happy that you're able to kind of witness and understand something that I don't think a lot of us really have much experience with. So if you've seen Sound of Metal and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.